I think we're live. What's up, everybody? David Kurz here with another Freedom Achievers podcast. Super excited to have Ana Bozovic with us today. Ana Analytics. You can see her handle right there. Ana, thanks for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I always look forward to our conversations.
Oh man, me too. You know, I'm a big fan, guys. If you're not following Ana on Instagram, that's where I follow you the most. But if you're not following Ana on Instagram, please do so. You're gonna get a nice mix of everything, Ana, everything from jiu-jitsu to what's happening in the market in South Florida and the rest of the country.
It's me reporting on financial stuff and me training with UFC fighters. So there you go.
That's awesome, man. I always get excited about our conversations because our conversations are not theoretical. And that's and I think that's one of my favorite parts because when, you know, I'm a sales coach, right? Like I teach real estate agents how to make more money, right? And one of the things that we always harp on is know your market, know your market, know your market. And at a deeper level, real estate agents, you know, we talk to them about even knowing people's names and houses in the neighborhood that they're trying to dominate. But you come with a really strong aspect of what's happening in today's market. And you said something the other day that flipped me out, right? You said the one piece that has grown in South Florida was $2,000 a square foot and above.
Yes, and we hit a record in volume 2022. Yep.
I was like, who the fuck is buying this? Right? Like
and it's over 80% cash.
So, all right, so let's talk about that. Talk to me a little bit about that. $2,000 a square foot is killing it in South Florida, 2,000 or above, 80% of this cash. Who are the buyers?
I believe it's heavily domestic driven. Because actually, if we look at our data, there's data put out by the association on volume of sales activity from Latin America, and it took a real dive during COVID, as we would expect, right? Because they couldn't come here, quite literally. So that surge of luxury buying that we had in that immediate post-COVID aftermath was in the absence of the Latin American buyer, which is an important distinction. So it was driven by this domestic surge, this wealth and talent migration that we're still in the early stages of. It's not rocket science. People are leaving high lockdown, high tax states.
High lockdown, high tax, shitty weather states. Like really?
Yeah, I know that's the extra part. Cherry on top. Like we have better weather.
Yeah, it's like the cherry on top. Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's a distinction because we'll get a lot of viewers that will see this that they won't be from the South Florida area. So, you know, we'll have viewers from the Northeast, the West Coast, everywhere. And I want to discuss that distinction a little bit because historically, South Florida has been really driven by South America. And that stopped in COVID. And then South Florida got nervous, right? Because we were like, wait a minute, even post-COVID, when the market was picking up, South Americans still couldn't come. And then we started attracting high wealth, high net worth individuals from the Northeast, particularly.
Correct.
Immediately. Why? Let's dig into that. Why did that happen? And more so than that, like we just hinted on it, right? Like high tax, lockdowns, all that stuff during COVID, but then we survived the post-COVID hype.
Correct.
So let's get into that.
Right. So COVID was kind of a catalyst that accelerated what was already in the works because it broke habits, and people are creatures of habit. They keep doing the same thing forever just because they have been, rather than revamping and building ground up. So COVID was like a full stop event. And it's very, very important to recognize, I say this all the time, that our pre-COVID capitals, epicenters, or our centers of commerce, our dense cities like New York, right? They were established pre-internet. They were post-World War II, pre-internet entities. The internet came at the end of the 20th century, and it was incorporated piecemeal into existing habits. People didn't rejigger how they lived. They brought it in, right? So all these cities were already there. The habits were already there. Then the internet came. Cool. It's a big technological innovation, just like the Gutenberg printing press transformed Europe, back in the day, right? Then we had COVID, which in many ways acted like a world war. Usually big shifts in the world are precipitated either by major technological evolutions or world wars. And COVID, with what it did to restrictions of people and then sovereign debt, all that stuff, it created wartime economies essentially, and a break in habits. And people kind of had this pause. They're like, well, we're not going to work the way we used to anyway. And then for those that could, life is reshaping around the internet. And at the same time, the places that were particularly egregious in how they handled COVID, they've higher taxes. You're paying more to live there, but you couldn't go anywhere, and the weather's terrible. And then enough people, not everybody, but enough people started to say, hey, maybe we can live another way. And then hybrid work, of course, is not, we're still in early days of that. How we went to work was established before internet. So now we have the internet, and a certain percentage of people are never going to go back the way that they were. And even if 10% of people change their behavior at scale, that's enormous. And at the same time, all this stuff kind of came together, technology, breaking habits, this thing. And then the states that we're receiving people from are on top of it all hostile to capital. They keep introducing wealth taxes, surtaxes, mansion taxes. Like, oh my God. Last week on Thursday, I think it was 7 states introduced legislation for further wealth taxes. And these are states that are already losing population. So wow. They're just going to keep putting them over.
They keep pushing them away.
They can't help themselves. And also it's like a tiny percentage of the population, like 1%, accounts for like 50% of tax base in many of these places. So you get just the tiny, like 10% of your high net worth taxpayers leave, you've decimated your budget. And that's going to lead to further shortfalls, further all that stuff. And it's kind of just this momentum that builds.
And no one did better during these times than technology. Let's face it. Zoom, like, if you didn't know what Zoom was prior to Memorial Day 2020, you know what it is now. Yep. You know what I mean? Zoom, Instacart, Amazon, all of these guys, they really just took off. Uber Eats, like you name anything that meant that I did not have to put on a mask and go to the store.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And that all that technology kind of shifted and changed, and it created more jobs. That's one piece. But the next piece is, even with all of that, like you mentioned, people found location freedom, if you will.
Yes, right? Exactly right. Mm-hmm.
And so with location freedom, they were able to come down here and benefit from here. Why don't states, like, and this is a conversation, you're not going to know the answer, but we're going to have a fucking honest opinion, which would be great. Why do states not recognize that if the high net worth individuals stay, they spend more money where they are?
So actually, I think about this quite a bit. When we say states, it's not the people. We're talking about the politicians who are on the committees, on the whatever, that are making these decisions, right? They're the ones driving this policy. Politicians, as a rule, they're not aligned with the outcome of what they do. They can act with impunity. They get their pensions, they get whatever, and they're on short time frames around their own election cycles. They just want to get elected and do well for themselves. And this does not necessarily align with what is good for the population in the longer. They don't think long term. They think aligned to their own political careers, and I don't think they really care. So that's it. And they're going to pander to their voting base. And as their voting base in a pluralist democracy, right? It's the dumbest half plus one wins. Like, let's be real, it's math, right? Yeah. So if the dumbest half plus one is on your take, you're paying them. You're going to pander to them to get elected. What do you care?
Yeah, so it's almost like we're saying, I'm gonna introduce a wealth tax, and then all the poor, middle class, and poorer people look and go, yeah, that's a great idea. Right. The rich should pay more.
Right. And that politician gets in office. They're going to get their salary in office. All these people get pensions, I believe, for the rest of their lives if they're in Congress, if they're in whatever. So they don't care. They're in. And unfortunately, it caters to that personality type. We see it everywhere, across party lines. So that's what it is. It's people making decisions. The people who are making decisions, their self-interest based timelines are not the same as the timeline of the entity, the state that they're affecting.
And then they leave. They leave where they are. They lose that high net worth individual. They come to places like South Florida and Dallas. Let's face it, Texas is getting a lot of that same rush that we're getting.
We're getting, so the IRS has been, and I just put, if anyone goes to my website, it's analytics.mammy. I just put out a big annual report. And in the last few pages of that, I outline kind of bullet style, quantifiable, like information coming from the IRS and Census Bureau that quantifies aspects of this wealth and talent migration. So actually, in that 1 year, 2021, 2022, our state, Florida, had, I think, only around 21,000 taxpayers arrive who file over 200,000 gross. And Texas was the second place recipient with just 5,000. So we had 4 times as many as Texas.
Wow. I did not know that.
Yeah, we were the #1 recipient of what the IRS defines as high value taxpayers at a 200,000 plus gross threshold.
Because we always joke about how crazy California is, right? And the lunacy behind the policies and everything else that they do. And then we talk about how those people are running away to Texas. right? Because we don't get a lot of Californians in South Florida. We get some, but not a lot, right? Our attraction is the Northeast, pretty much, you know.
Yeah,
and
with
so,
the time zone, easy flight, yeah.
right. And so it's crazy to me to believe that we literally got 4 times as many people from the Northeast, which is this big, in comparison to how many people Texas got from California.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. I didn't know that. I
think we're an easier move because we're from a high net worth New Yorker perspective, because we're international in a way that Texas is not. I've spent time in Dallas, not to insult, it's a different vibe. So if you're a New Yorker, you're going to feel more at home here. We have one of the best international airports in the country. I think we have the most direct international flights from Miami International than any airport in the country. We're way past pre-pandemic levels of airport traffic. The airport's only 20 minutes from downtown. It's awesome. So it's easy to get to anywhere. And then as far as like the cultures, it's like it's an international city in the same time zone. It doesn't have the same religious aspect that Texas has also, which is going to be more agreeable to people coming from the Northeast. So
all right, so let's I want to go through 2 more steps with you, and then I promise I'll let you go. But what now? Like why it's post pandemic, it's post all that garbage, like everything's open everywhere, everything's open, right? I don't know if in New York you still got to show your double vax card, but you know, everything's open, restaurants are open, parks are open, people are back to normal post pandemic, right? Why are we still thriving in comparison to the rest of the country, where places in this country real estate is down 30%, we're up? Why is it?
I mean, look at us versus San Francisco, right? That's a
I think San Fran was what, 30+% down.
Yep, we're a terrible office market. Yeah, we're polar opposite from them in every way, because momentum is a real thing, and it's like, you know, trends in motion tend to stay in motion, and the flow of money is going right now. And while we're building positive momentum, the places that are feeder jurisdictions are building negative momentum, and people are seeing this real intangible ways with their quality of life, with crime, with all of those things. And it's not going backwards, it's getting more and more. And at the same time, they have friends and family who moved here who are saying, wow, it's great, you can live here, it's awesome. And it's all kind of feeding itself. And then, like all short-term kind of socialist people, these politicians are doubling down their positions, right? I mean, it's amazing to me. These states announcing new legislation, like I mentioned, for wealth taxes, they're the ones hemorrhaging population. and while they're hemorrhaging population, they're like, I know, we're gonna have more wealth taxes. California is again floating not only their mansion tax, which goes into effect April 1st, but they're floating like retroactive exit taxes. I mean, they're just gonna kick people out as fast as they can. It's really incredible. And so people are seeing the writing on the wall, and enough people are seeing it. And then here's the thing. The world always shifts. This is one thing I've always said. The present is not sacrosanct. Think how different the world was 100 years ago. Why would the next 100 years be any less different, right? And in 1960, as an example, Detroit had the highest per capita income in the country, and that is far from truth now, right? So nothing stays the same, ever. That's like the rule. And so we had this cataclysmic event we had that aligns with the new technology, with the internet, cataclysmic warlike event, right? And now there's a shift going on, like there always is. And it just behooves us to try to figure out where the flow is going. And South Florida is one of the places.
Do with industry, right? Like 1960, Detroit had the highest per capita, right? But there was a lot of industry there.
Cars,
and then by 1980, Detroit had the highest murder rate in the entire world.
Yep.
Right.
Things change quickly.
You know, it's just and there has a lot to do with why, like industry leaving and policy getting put in place that pushes people out and away.
100%. You know, I went to a talk that was given, actually, an interview. The mayor of Miami, Mayor Suarez, interviewed Ken Griffin, the CEO of Citadel, over at Miami-Dade College about maybe like a month or two ago. We know Ken Griffin, that was all over the news that he came and moved here. Many others have as well. He's just been the headline, right? And so he's given a lot of talks about this. And he said, this is interesting, actually. He said, it's not the taxes. Look, he's been paying Illinois, Chicago taxes forever, right? When you're that rich, I mean, it doesn't really matter that much to him. If it was a tax thing, he would have left anyway. That's another important thing. Our tax advantage has always been there, right? So whenever you see a spike in a trend, you have to ask yourself what changed. It wasn't the taxes that changed. We always had the tax advantage, right? And he even said that. He goes, it wasn't the taxes. He said it was the trends he saw growing. And he mentioned the crime that he felt was going to, and quality of life that they felt was going to keep going up and up, and how the jurisdiction was hostile to entrepreneurship. And he felt that it was no longer, where he was no longer a place where you could pursue your version of the American dream. And he felt like a place like Florida had policies more aligned with that. And then also he said that he didn't like the wokeness at his kids' schools. And he made a big point of that. Those are the 3 things he said. And the part about the wokeness in schools was not reported on by the press that he said that.
Wow. That's yeah, and our governor is not woke at all. So
Exactly. No, and it killed me because this got a lot of coverage. A lot of reporters wrote about this interview, and it's on YouTube. People can find it. It was Suarez and Ken Griffin at Miami College, like maybe 2 months ago, and you can watch the whole thing. But he said,
I'm gonna grab
schools, and no reporter touched that, and he made a big point of that.
Yeah, no reporter's gonna touch it because God forbid they'll be out of work.
Exactly.
It's insanity to me. And so one of the things I want to touch on is the way that we're viewed as a community now. So it's very different than it was before. Before we were viewed as a tourist location, a place you wanted to come party. Ultra was a big deal. The beach was a big deal. Like, and we were very much viewed as a place you come in and then you leave, right? And now we're viewed as a place where you come in and you stay. Are we worried? Are we worried of a shift in mindset? And so are we worried about the halfback, right? So are we worried about the person that comes from New York, shoots down to South Florida, sticks around for a little bit, says, South Florida's not for me, goes halfway back, ends up in the Carolinas somewhere, right? No. Because they don't want to go back to New York, but they don't want to stay in South Florida either. And I know for a very long time, the halfback was a thing for Florida in general. Forget South Florida, folks would move to Cape Coral, and then they would go, okay, this really slowed down for me, and I kind of miss the seasons. And so they would end up going halfway back. Do you think that we're worried about a lot of these New Yorkers going, man, this was great, but, I've been here 2 years and I miss fall? Like, you know what I mean?
On net, I mean, not everyone's going to stay. That's normal. But if we look at the net gains are so positive. And look, I'm from New York. I grew up in New York City. I've been here 10 years, so I came before it was cool, right? 10 years ago. And I mean, I think more people get acclimated to how warm it is. You couldn't pay me to live in winter again.
Yeah,
no.
I don't even want to visit in the winter,
No, and also New Yorkers as a rule are going to appreciate places that are more international, that are just bigger, and that have the airport, have all of that. And so while the Carolinas, whatever it is, it's nice, it's going to be less conducive to most people from there. They're like, where are you going to find a city this big on the East Coast?
Yeah,
that's not international. We're kind of it.
What happens is we have continued growth in South Florida. Where do people go? What's the move like? What is like? It's just going to keep growing and growing and growing, and inventory is low, and housing's low, and you can't keep running. We can't.
Where to stand? It's tricky because there's very little inventory. 2% below COVID. Yep.
I mean, I went down to Homestead yesterday, and I was like, oh, "This is incredible night." Like, I rarely drive around Homestead. I was there yesterday, and I was like, "This is insane. This is like you live in Homestead and not leave anywhere and have everything you need. It's great." And they got the keys right down the street. So hello, It's kind of like, that thought process of being able to work wherever you want, be able to have a job out of New York or a job out of, I don't know, Chicago, and still live in South Florida and work every day from your home, from your computer, I think it's a game changer. Like you said, that change is not going to disappear. Like after COVID, no one said, okay, you know what? We're going to reopen 30,000 square foot office again and everyone come back to work, right? They found people to be more effective and conducive to their new environment.
Yeah. Some hybrid model. I mean, the model that we have, the 5 day a week, however many hours, that's a pre-internet 20th century model made around the telephone.
Yeah.
Like, it's normal that it'll change.
Yeah. Man, it's incredible. I mean, any final thoughts that you want to leave with everybody, what the future looks like for the market as a country? We talked a lot about South Florida, and we know that we're really striving looking forward. But
as a country, the phase of the empire that we're in, it's an important thing to recognize, is that COVID accelerated a lot of stuff that's going to be felt differently across the country. The way that it was handled accelerated an already widening wealth gap. We have totally divergent, incompatible belief systems coexisting across our country, right? It's like my team, your team, you're evil, you're evil. People believe all these crazy different things, and it's very, very polarizing. And now people are actually geographically polarizing in accordance with their belief systems. which is also, I think, going to accelerate this division. So I think for like that's just the phase we're in. I don't know, next 10, 20 years, these are rounding errors when it comes to history, but it's a lot for our lifetimes, right? So next 10 to 20 years, I believe the country's going to keep polarizing, and we're going to have increasingly disparate, incompatible belief systems coexisting across the country. And that's going to be even more so as people continue to relocate based upon their perceptions of freedom and whatever it is they like.
It did happen very quickly. You're absolutely right. Like all of this new talk, all this woke shit, and this and that, and you know, all that stuff that happened very quickly, and it was like integrated into like schools and education, everything. Like,
I mean,
there wasn't even a fucking thought process.
Listen, we have guys putting on women's bathing suits, and now that guy is being nominated for Female Athlete of the Year by the NCAA, the college whatever association, and you have half the country thinks that's wonderful, and half the country's like, yo, that's crazy. Me included. And I don't. Listen, I don't. It's nuts. Like, I've been an athlete my whole life. Can you imagine training your whole life, getting beaten by some guy? Someone was a guy last year and was number 400 as a guy, and then they come and this year they win. Like, what changed? You don't have an advantage, really? And the reason that I don't really post politics because I'm an independent. Actually, it polarizes too much. But that I post because that to me is an allegory of our times. It's an insight to somebody's mind. Like, if you could truly believe that, using that swimmer as an example from Princeton, that you swam for 3 or 4 years as a man, you were ranked number 400. Next year you win as a woman, and that's fine, and you have no advantage. If you could actually say that with a straight face and believe it, then in my mind, what else are you capable of believing?
Yeah.
And that's where we are as a country as far as completely incompatible belief systems. And I don't think that's going away. And I think people are going to geographically now polarize in accordance with that. Like, I don't want to live with those people, and they tax me, I'm going over there.
Man, it's so crazy that you said that, because I've actually heard that out loud, and I didn't put 2 and 2 together. I've actually heard people say that out loud. So we have some friends that moved here from Portland, Oregon. And Portland is woke as fuck right now. And they're on some next level shit, and their streets are full of drug addicts every single place. And then they have centers that give out free drugs and other centers that put off the drugs, you know, and it's kind of like, all right, which one is it? You know, and they came to South Florida. They said, this is where we want to be. And they said, you know, we'll learn the culture here. We're fine with that. We just don't want to be in that. And I just, you know, and we thought about that, you know, and we said, oh shit, yeah, that makes sense. But I didn't think about the bigger picture that you just brought up, that over the next 10, 20 years creates separation in the country, even geographically.
Yep, it's happening 100%. And, you know, people asked me before, when we started in the early days post-COVID, when we started to see that we're getting domestic market coming in, they say, oh man, I hope those people don't turn the state blue and vote in the same policies. And I actually said at the time, I said, you know, I think that the true believers are staying. And I think that people leaving now are the ones who want something different. And when we had that last election, I think I was right, because we had Miami-Dade for the first time in like 20 years, what read, and actually our margin for the governor was wider than it ever was.
Wow.
I think that's what's happening.
Yeah, that's what's happening. So Florida's a red state for the next, 10, 20 years? You think?
I'm sorry?
You think Florida's a red state for the next couple decades?
I do. And I think it's a different flavor of red than Texas. I think we're more libertarian red.
Yeah.
But I think so. I think so. And I think that the differences in quality of life are going to be so like bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger as these momentum cycles continue to grow, which they will inevitably, unfortunately, for our feeder jurisdictions. I think it's just going to keep reinforcing. I mean, how funny if we have Newsom and DeSantis running against each other for president. We're going to have the net exodus state and the net winner state. Right. And the election will still be close. That's the beauty of the irony, because that's how divided and crazy the country is.
And man, folks, if you're listening to this right now, I want you to realize and understand this is not a political conversation. This is the reality of what is shifting the housing markets, the geographical markets, the financial markets, everything that we talk about, everything that you need to know to be a better entrepreneur in today's world. This is it right here. This is the shit that affects you. This is the shit that helps your business or hurts your business. And
how you can explain to your clients that the national news homogenizes data. They give national averages, whatever's going on. But it's really important to recognize that we are in that period of the country where we have different realities across the country.
And more so now than ever, right? Like, you know, the national news gets on, and I tell people all the time, this has been it was my 2022 and my 2023 kind of motto. Change the narrative.
Yes.
That's been my motto. Everyone I talk to, change the narrative, because your consumer is consuming CNN, Fox News, CNBC, and all this bullshit that's getting fed to them. And so they're sitting in their house thinking, well, I can't sell because nationally everything's down 30% and I'm going to lose my ass, when they're up 10% in their neighborhood. And it gets very dynamic in places like South Florida, major metropolitan areas, because let's just, New York, the price point in the Bronx is different than Brooklyn. It's different than Manhattan. It's different than Staten Island. It's different. Same thing in South Florida. The price in Kendall is different than the price in Homestead, the price in Cutler Bay, the price in Coral Gables, the price in Coconut Grove. And by the way, all of these locations are within 20 to 30 minutes of each other.
Yep, exactly.
Right?
Correct.
So know your market, folks, and know it well, and expand your mind to know, regardless of your beliefs, regardless of what you feel is right, wrong, or twisted in the world, understand what's happening so you understand how to address your consumer.
100%. These are quantifiable points. Politics actually don't even matter. Your opinion doesn't matter. These are points that we have quantified from the census data, from IRS data, from our own real estate data. Exactly. Give
out your website again, because I want people to go download your report.
Sure. It's analytics.miami. And I just, there's a 2022 annual with a 2023 forecast. It has all this stuff in there. And then I'm on Instagram at Ana_analytics.
Dude, can I download that? Or can I download it and send it to my database? Or would you be okay with that?
100%. Yeah.
Cool. I'm going to send it. So I know Mike is listening to this right now. Mike, please do not post this without us sending that out. Man, Anna, I appreciate you so much. And I love our conversations. And I feel like we need to do this on a quarterly basis.
We've been documenting this for some time now. It's great.
It's been, yeah, man, we've been doing these little interviews probably since like 2017, I think.
I think so,
yeah, which is amazing. Back when we had Kurz Real Estate, and dude, I just love it. I thank you very much, as always, for joining me once again and in my podcast, and I look forward to the next time.
Thank you. Likewise. Thanks so much for having me. Great year, 2023.
Yes, make sure you follow us on social media, ladies and gentlemen. If you're watching this live, if you're not watching it live and you're listening to the podcast, it's analytics.com or I'm sorry, say it again.
It's analytics.miami is the website.
Analytics.miami. Jump in there, download the report. Doesn't matter if you live here, check out the report, and then create something great for your area. If you live in Dallas, if you live in Ohio, if you live in the Bronx, I mean, just get an idea of what you can create that would create value to your consumers. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. We love you all. See you soon.